All right, I think people are filtering in. We might have a couple more join, but we are going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all so much for coming to attend the final webinar of this series from the Machine Actionable Plans pilot. We've been really enjoying sharing with you all about the exciting pilot projects that have gone on at various institutions, learning about the pilot integrations that were developed. And today is kind of a wrap-up webinar to really share some of the implementation strategies and overall recommendations for how you can get started with machine actionable plans at your institution. Next slide, please. So today, speaking in this webinar, we have Maria Praetzellis and I from the California Digital Library. We're going to give an introduction to the overview and the pilots. We also have Brian Riley, developer on the DMP tool, also from CDL, to talk about our API. And then you have Cynthia Hudson Vitale from ARL and Johns Hopkins, who are talking about some overall strategies for advancing machine actual plans at your institution. And as always, want to thank other members of our pilot project members who are not presenting today, including Judy Rettenberg from ARL, and John Chodacki from CDL, as well as all of the administrators and pilot partners from our various institutions. So next slide. So as mentioned, we're going to start with just a quick introduction to the pilot project. Many of you who have been in our other webinars might have heard this before, but in case anybody's new, we want to let everybody know what this pilot was. I'm going to give a lightning fast overview of what some of the integrations were from our various pilot projects. Brian is going to talk about how you can work with the DMP Tool API and talk a little bit about upcoming changes. Cynthia is going to talk about advancing machine actual plans at your institution. I'm going to talk a little bit about our next steps in the project, and then we're going to have about 15 minutes at the end for questions. So throughout the talk, please use the Zoom Q&A function to leave questions for the presenters, and we might answer some of them live, but we'll have a lot of time at the end for questions. So feel free to get those started throughout the presentation, and then we will get back to them. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Maria to introduce our project.
All right, thanks, Becky. So like Becky said, I know that many of you have attended some of our earlier webinars, so I'm going to keep my overview brief. I do want to add that if you want more details on some of the origins of our work, please check out our webpage. We've listed many of the earlier resources that ARL and CDL developed together. Next slide, please. So as a quick refresh, Machine Actionable DMP is just a machine-readable version of the traditional text-based narrative of a DMP, which is usually 2 pages maximum and required for most grant applications. The principal goals of Machine Actionable DMPs are to facilitate automation and integration with administrative and research workflows. So one of the principal goals is for them to be living documents that are updated and accessed and used over time. Next slide, please. So this is a joint project between CDL and ARL. So we've worked with ARL for a number of years on projects related to data management and sharing. And this project builds on earlier work we did, particularly in around 2019, where we looked into machine actionable DMPs and the use of persistent identifiers. So we're funded by IMLS, and happily we recently had our funding reinstated. So we can actually go ahead and finish up the final stages of this work. We have additional support from both the NSF and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. CDL's been working in this space for a number of years, including from the very beginning, gathering use cases for how people might use machine actual DMPs, to developing some of the technical standards that define our work. We've done a lot of this in concert with the Research Data Alliance, RDA. We worked with them on the development of a common standard metadata application for data management plans, worked with them on the usage of persistent identifiers throughout DMPs. We're currently working with them on a new common standard for APIs for DMPs. So Brian will talk a little bit about that when he speaks. But this pilot was designed to really showcase some of the features and technologies that we've been building for a number of years, and have institutions test some of this stuff out, so that we could continue to iterate and make sure that what we were developing was really in alignment with what institutions needed. Next slide, please. This project involved two principal activities, the prototyping and integration of workflows at various institutions that we'll talk about, and then taking these, implementing new standards and new functionalities for machine actionable DMPs that were informed by this first phase. So the active pilot phase is completed. It was 1 calendar year. It went from January through December of 2024. Next slide, please. So we were fortunate to have a really highly engaged set of institutional partners throughout the project. So each of these teams participated in regular cohort meetings. They also worked within their institutions to prototype and map out system integrations. And we learned a lot in this process. Cynthia will talk a little bit more about what some of those lessons were, really looking into what was possible, what people were, imagining for how they wanted to take these news tools, and also looking at some of the challenges and roadblocks that some of these institutions faced when trying to put some of these things into practice. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Becky. She'll give you a quick synopsis and information about some of these projects.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, many of you may have seen most, but not all of these projects reviews in past webinars. But just wanted to give a very brief roundup of the types of projects people worked on and the integrations people did to kind of whet your appetite for some possible machine actionable projects you might want to do at your own institution. So kicking us off, we had a couple of different institutions that looked at connecting machine actionable DMPs to their own institution. Next slide. So one example of this is Northwestern University, who is, did a lot of prototyping and workflow mapping to figure out how the DMP tool and machine actionable plan fits into their overall research landscape. So there's a lot of aspects of their research workflow here, and the DMP tool is a critical part at the early stage of getting into that data management flow. Next slide. And one of the big areas they looked at was how that machine actionable plan could potentially connect to the other local systems that they have. There's a lot of potential connections they can see connecting to their local system, like NU elements and series that they use for research data and research workflows at Northwestern, and recognizing the value of the data from that machine actionable plan about how it could connect. So a lot of this work at many places still in progress, but there's a lot of benefit that people see from these potential connections. On the next slide, another example of this is from CU Boulder, also kind of in the earlier stages of exploring what these connections can be. So there's a lot of the systems that are already connected in various ways, and they're looking at how they can create more connections, sharing information, transferring data from one place to another in an automated way to generally reduce burden. A lot of the information in the DMP tool has a potential connection through the API to a lot of these different systems. On the next slide, we see a similar workflow mapping that was done with LASP, the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics at CU Boulder. And similarly, they have a lot of local systems that their researchers use at Boulder, and their goal is to connect the machine actionable plan to these. They're going to both pull metadata from the DMP to other systems, as well as update the DMP, with information from other places. In the next set, on the next slide, we have a couple examples of people that were looking at using machine actionable plans to improve cross-campus collaboration. So in our first project, next slide, we have Penn State, who did a 2-day workshop bringing together key stakeholders across research data management at Penn State. One example that I thought was really cool is this data life cycles activity that they did, getting these stakeholders from all different departments to really map out this workflow together and see the different goals, priorities, and parts of this system that people have and have insight into across the data lifecycle at Penn State. On the next two slides, we can kind of flip through. We see an agenda for what this 2-day workshop is, just to give an example of the types of topics that were covered and the different departments that were at play here. And they had a lot of benefit from getting people together across these different systems into the same room to talk about research data management at Penn. UC Berkeley is another example of kind of using this promise of machine actual plans to develop this collaboration. So the team at UC Berkeley worked with their sponsored projects office, and one of the cool benefits that they had is they were able to get access to their grant submission database at UC Berkeley to search and see all DMPs at their university. One thing that some universities struggle to is just finding DMPs and getting access to them across a disparate landscape. And so being able to access this really amazing database and be able to search through DMPs opened up a lot of possible projects there. And they're looking into what kind of information could potentially be pulled from these DMPs and some potential integrations with this database and other systems. So on the next slide, the last couple examples I want to talk about are new functionality for drafted DMPs. So these are people who are bringing in something completely new to the DMP, a feature that, through the machine actual plan that they can offer to researchers or administrators. So the first example on next slide is UC Riverside, who developed a prototype app to shepherd the information from the DMP across various campus units. So after the DMP is drafted, they use the API to pull in the metadata and the narrative into their app. And then it goes from department to department, like IT, research integrity, research computing, and each group can input their own comments on the data management plan, what information is going to be needed, send an email and a notification to the next unit. And ultimately, throughout this process, at the end of the workflow, they can actually assign the resource compute needed. And so they can, allocate storage space, for example, depending on the data needs that were presented in the DMP. On the next slide, another example of this was Arizona State University, who developed a prototype app to have an AI agent review DMPs and offer feedback for improvement. This helps in particular researchers who might request feedback the night before a grant is due. And so they will pull information using the DMP Tool API to get the DMP into their tool. And then they use a sophisticated prompt to explain to the AI agent, how to review the DMP, what kind of things to look for, and what template to give feedback on. So the next slide, you can just see a screenshot of their app and, where they can submit their DMP for analysis. This is at ASU only right now. And then on the next slide, you can see an example snippet of some of the review that it came out with, where it can suggest areas that a person might want to improve based on what it was fed. So on the next slide, just to wrap up this section, a couple common themes that we saw across these projects. On the next slide, we have the machine actual plan as a connector. So the biggest benefit of this is that it facilitates this information exchange across increasingly disparate departments. A lot of what we heard about in the interviews that we did and across this project was about just how many different units on campus are working on data management, have their own policies and guidance, and this machine actual plan can be a way to facilitate both the concrete information exchange and just the social information exchange of getting departments working together. There's areas where it can improve efficiency by reducing manual data entry, could bring across new value and functionality, and assist in scaling the ability of human workers. So it offers a lot of automation and efficiency improvements that can mean a small team can do more with less. On the next slide, there were also many challenges that people had, realizing the benefits of these machine actual plans. So one thing that we heard is the API is not offering all of the functionality that people needed for their desired connections. We are working on that. You're going to hear more about that in the next section. But that is something that we're excited to improve in the future so that people can build the full potential that they're imagining. Some people found that it was difficult to take advantage of machine actual plans made outside the DMP tool. So when DMPs are written in the DMP tool, there's a lot of inherent access and ability that administrators have through those plans. But if people wrote them on their own, it could be more difficult to take advantage of that. And then finally, the departments often have different and sometimes conflicting goals and policies. So there's just an increasingly complicated landscape for research data management. And there's a lot of challenges that people had trying to work together and build a lot of these connections. This is something Cynthia is going to talk about some strategies for in her section. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Brian.
Thanks, Becky. So as everyone's noted, the DMP Tool APIs was sort of supported all of the pilot projects. And we'd like to give you a quick overview of the tool and how you can get started with it. Next slide, please. So what is an API? Probably most of you already know this, but an API is just a way for two computer systems to exchange information with one another. And we use something called the RDA DMP Common Standard format, which was developed by the Research Data Alliance community and the broader DMP Tool community. And that provides a structured way to convey information about a DMP between systems. Next slide, please. So the DMP Tool API is specifically a REST API. And what a REST API is it uses HTTP verbs and structured paths and the URL to indicate what type of action should be performed on a specific resource. So a get is a fetch, post would create a new thing, put would update it, and delete would delete that resource. So some examples of within the DMP Tool API are get DMPs 123 would get that specific DMP's metadata for you, and then post DMPs would create a DMP. Next slide. These are a list of some of the supported use cases that we currently offer. I think the primary one that most of the pilot partners took advantage of was just fetching DMPs. So requesting the list of all their DMPs or getting a specific DMP and pulling that information into their systems. We do currently, though, offer the ability to create DMPs, as well as upload narrative PDF documents to attach to a DMP. So in the event that it's created outside of the system, you could upload the PDF. And then the final one is updating a DMP. And next slide. Thank you. So how do you get started? Contact us to set up an account would be the first step. Reviewing our documentation is also extremely helpful. And then we have an open API website, which is also known as Swagger. You may have some familiarity with that. And that's what I wanted to kind of go over the next few slides is the open API site and how it makes it easy for you to test and experiment. Next slide, please. So our open API site, it's available to you. It's attached to our staging environment. And that is because it allows you to go in and experiment and test without sort of manipulating production data or live DMPs. You can fetch DMPs from this without an account, as long as those DMPs are public. DMPs created in the stage environment. You can create DMPs, in the staging environment within the DMP tool and publish those, and they'll be available to you via the API. Next slide, please. So one important step to get started with it is to go to the DMP tool staging website and our public plans page. And in here, when you're searching for DMPs, over on the right-hand side of the card for each DMP, you'll see a DMP ID. And that's sort of the key that you need to fetch a DMP from the API. So you would make a note of that. Next slide, please. And then you'd visit the Open API site. So this is the landing page for that site. There's some instructions at the top. Over on the right-hand side, you can see an authorize button. That's to enter in credentials, which we can give you once you sign up. And next slide, please. A little further down on the page is sort of the heart of the API. So this is the list of all of the endpoints. Again, it's a REST API. So the first thing you see is get, post, delete. Those are those HTTP verbs, and then the path. The paths that have the DMP ID in curly braces, that's where you would plug in that DMP ID that we just found on the DMP tool stage site. Another thing to note here is on the right-hand side, there's little lock icons. And those mean that those endpoints require you to authenticate. So the ones that don't validate and get DMPs and a specific one, those are the ones that are open to the public that you can begin testing with immediately. Next slide, please. So we'll go and take a look at the get DMPs endpoint. When you expand the section, it gives you sort of a hopefully helpful description of what the endpoint does, and then the fields that it expects or allows you to enter. Next slide, please. So if you click try it out, it basically makes the section interactable. And so here you can see I've pasted in that DMP ID into the field. That one's required, and then you can click execute. Next slide, please. Once you click execute, assuming there was no typos or there's no issues, you should get a 200 response from the server, as well as the JSON metadata. So this is, again, that RDA common standard, and it's inside the items section. I won't go over we don't have time to go over the entire common standard at this point. Next slide, please. But one thing I would like to note is that when you get the JSON metadata, inside that metadata is a DMP roadmaps related identifier section, and in there is the link to download the PDF. And that's assuming that the DMPs is public. Then you can go fetch the actual narrative document. Next slide, please. Security. So we use a standard called OAuth. This is not your DMP tool login for the UI. If you want to access those endpoints that create and update that are restricted, you need to contact us and we can set you up with an account. And that involves giving you client ID and a client secret and some scopes. And scopes are ways that we use to sort of restrict what you can do in the system. So there's reading, writing, uploading, etc. Next slide, please. So once you have your credentials, if you remember back on the home page, there was a button called Authorize. When you click that, it pops up and you can enter that information and click Authorize. Next slide. Once you've done that, the Open API site is very helpful because it gets the authentication token back from our system and it just kind of manages that for you while you're testing. Next slide, please. So what do you do once you've played with the Open API site and you're happy with it and you want to move forward? Again, contact us to set up an account. Share our documentation with your development team to talk about integrations and how it might be used. And then once your integrations sort of fully formed, you can contact us and we can set you up with access to our production system. So we ask that you do all of your initial development against our staging system. And then once everything's ready, we can give you access to production. Next slide, please. Some current limitations, and these were found by our pilot project partners, as noted before. You can only access published DMPs, so ones that have DMP IDs via the API currently. DMPs that are created through the API aren't visible in the UI. And then narratives are also only available as PDF documents. So they're not part of that structured JSON document. And when you search, we don't allow you to just openly search across all the records. That's some performance issues currently that we're working on. So we do require that you specify a funder or a ORCID when you search. Next slide, please. The good news, though, is that we are going to address all of those issues. So you'll be able to get all DMPs, whether or not they're published, assuming that they belong to your institution. DMPs created through the API will, of course, be visible within the new UI. Narrative information will also be included in that structured JSON so that it's more machine actionable. And as Maria mentioned, we're currently working on a project with the Research Data Alliance to come up with a REST API specification. So it's going to basically allow you to update anything in the RDA record. So like you'll be able to do more nuanced things like update a contributor or add a grant ID, do very specific things. Another exciting thing that we're working on with the new system is we'll also be introducing GraphQL endpoints. These will allow you to do basically anything you can do in the UI. So manage your institutional guidance and templates, customize funder templates, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. And that's all I have. So I'll turn it over to Cynthia.
Great. And hello, everyone. I'm excited to be with you today to talk about how your institution can begin or accelerate implementation or piloting of machine actionable data management plans. Today, I get to talk about some practical stuff, which is super fun. We're going to walk through like 9 actionable ideas or tips that can help your institution get exploring, piloting, or implementing maDMPs. So as we have heard, maDMPs go beyond static documents and serve as dynamic tools, triggering action, streamlining workflows, and improving compliance. But implementation and piloting requires thoughtful planning, cross-functional coordination, and alignment with institutional priorities. So, one of the first important tips that has come out of this project is really to establish governance and alignment. So, first off, securing high leadership sponsorship is always a good idea. Without high-level buy-in, momentum often stalls. And so this means engaging the research office, IT, or equivalent leaders early. The most effective way to do this is by showing how maDMP support strategic institutional goals, whether that's research excellence, support for research integrity, or federal compliance. Additionally, connecting maDMPs to broader institutional priorities is essential for really unlocking and getting the support you need. The second kind of tip we have is establishing some cross-functional guidance or cross-institution guidance or governance. We suggest forming a working group that includes library, IT, research administration, and ideally a faculty representative. And this group can serve as the core team to kind of align policies and guide implementation. And really, I think it's important to think of this group as a steering committee that keeps the project grounded in real campus needs. Finally, another tip for establishing governance and alignment is to kind of do this workflow mapping. You saw this in a number of the examples or pilot institutions work. So the pilot or the mapping of current workflows would look into better understanding where DMPs are created today, what systems touch them, what services or different units or campus offices leverage them for planning or could leverage them for planning. And this gap analysis can help you identify where automation may be able to reduce administrative burden. So you want to start at looking at points of duplication or bottlenecks. These can often be your lowest hanging fruit for automation. The next tip we have for you is to kind of clearly communicate the value of maDMPs to researchers. It's not enough to implement it, of course. As we know, for many faculty, DMPs feel like a checkbox. But when done right, they reduce duplicate data entry, they can trigger storage and consultation services automatically and really improve even research team coordination. But we need to be better, and we recommend that we make these benefits explicit to the researchers when we're letting them know and talking about maDMPs with them. Sharing real use cases from your institutions or peers is also a wonderful way to clearly communicate this benefit. Number 5, we suggest coming up with a stakeholder messaging strategy. Institutions need a targeted messaging strategy for a range of campus stakeholders. I just gave you an example of a very specific one for researchers, but obviously there's additional stakeholders across the campus that it's important to engage and talk about the value of maDMPs with. So IT and research system teams care about interoperability and data security. So it may be useful to position maDMPs that can enable smoother integrations across platforms for storage or for security, while also improving auditability and data lifecycle tracking. For researcher administrators and compliance officers, the message to this group might highlight how maDMPs support real-time monitoring, simplify auditing, and improve reporting for agency compliance. One other stakeholder that's not on here, but I think is also really important to engage with or to include in your strategy is department chairs and research deans. So for this audience, it may be useful to demonstrate institutional leadership for research support, and how maDMPs really align with national priorities around transparency and reproducibility. So the messaging strategy, there's lots of ways it can be undertaken. You can conduct stakeholder interviews, develop use cases. All of those things are really helpful. And really the goal here is to align maDMPs with the values and challenges the stakeholders already care about across your institution. So the next kind of tips we have around incentives and training integration. Yep. So first and foremost, incorporate maDMPs into existing training and resources, whether that's grant writing workshops, new faculty onboarding, any responsible conduct of research training. This makes adoption feel more natural, and we're hoping helps avoid a sense of one more thing being added to faculty workloads. Another fun idea is to offer incentives for early adoption. Early adopters, as we know, can help pave the way, but they sometimes need a reason to go first. So consider offering incentives such as recognition, small seed grants, or technical support for departments or faculty who pilot maDMPs. You might also highlight them in campus communications or research showcases. Finally, the last tip for incentives and training integration is to it's really essential to create a feedback loop. So let users share what's working and what's not. Use surveys or brief interviews, and then obviously act on that feedback. And that shows responsiveness and builds trust across the campus. So finally, when you're ready and you're feeling like you want to test out an integration for an maDMP, we recommend starting small with scoped pilots. Rather than attempting to roll out an integration campus-wide, maybe, identify a few departments or labs or research centers where there's clear enthusiasm. This allows you to kind of test and refine an approach before scaling. You can tailor your support and training. You could also, as things scale up and you have some positive feedback, it builds credibility and interest. As you're going through the pilot integration, it's really important about capturing results too. So time saved on data entry or coordination are key things you want to track. Any reduction in errors or duplicate work, improved service delivery, if through an maDMP integration, there's you can better do strategic planning for storage across a small research group or others. That's really important to kind of follow and understand. And finally, researcher satisfaction. So helping to gathering some qualitative information about the value of the maDMP as well. So just to recap, those are some 9 tips for accelerating or starting your adoption of maDMPs. It's really these are really strategic opportunities to align services, reduce burden, and increase kind of research agility. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Becky, who is going to take it from here.
Yeah, I just have a little bit of wrap up left, and then we're going to have a lot of time for questions. So We're going to start, continue preparing those. Thank you for the questions we've gotten already. So on the next slide, one of our next steps from the project is sharing materials from the pilot. So that is a question that we get a lot in our past webinars. We have our map pilot project there, and anything that we have shared will go there. We're going to be continuing to build this back up and sharing more resources. So as mentioned, our funding was reinstated, so hopefully that's going to help us gather a lot of these resources and put more time into putting out things like reports and guides and case studies from what we've learned, getting materials from the pilot partners, the presentation slides. All of that will be posted on the pilot website. The videos from the past webinars are available on ARL's YouTube channel, linked there. This one will be posted eventually after the site. We might be doing potential publications and conference talks. A lot of this is still early, trying to figure out, what is the best way to share information from this pilot, but those are the types of things we might consider doing. And we're also looking for the potential for an in-person event sometime in September. Very early stages. We don't have a lot of detail on this yet about who it's going to look like, what the audience is, but we do want to make sure that we get the learnings from this pilot out there and make it accessible to people as we go. On the next slide, another big area is the development of the DMP tool. So as you've heard from all of these webinars in the project, there's a lot of feedback that we've gotten about the API, the tool itself, and a lot of big initiatives that we have for machine actionability in general. So as many of you may know, we are in the process of rebuilding the DMP tool to better support this machine actionability. There's a lot of changes that we have to make to the back end of the site to be able to support all of these features that we want to offer people. And that's going to go along with a user interface change as well to hopefully make it easier to use and offer a lot more of these features on the site. We're going to be revamping the API software to allow all functionality of the UI. So rather than these specific things where we have to create one at a time, here's how you get a DMP, this new system will allow us to offer anything available in the website to be accessed through the API, because we're going to use our own API for that website. A lot of people have been asking us about the release date. We don't have an exact release date yet. We will keep people up to date. I would say it's likely going to be early next year, but we just don't know exactly where that's going to land. There's a lot of work that's going into this, and we'll keep everybody up to date. The API will be available when the new site comes out because it's so tied to what the rebuild is doing. We do plan to continue supporting existing integrations. So if you go build an integration with the API right now, that will still be available. That's not going to go away with the new site. There's just going to be more options in the new site. We also will be compatible with the RDA standard. As Brian mentioned, we both are supporting the metadata common standard for DMPs and the new group that's developing the open API or the API standard across DMP service providers will be compatible with that. And the reason for that is that, we want to make it easy for people to build integrations to do it with any DMP service provider. Obviously, we work in the DMP tool, but maybe you want to connect to the DMP tool, but maybe you want to use another DMP service provider too. And that we want to make it simple to build an integration with any of them. So if you build an integration with our API, it should be very simple to work with another DMP service as well. For updates specifically in the DMP tool development, feel free to follow our blog. That's where we'll post kind of major updates, every so often there about how that development is going. And the next slide, kind of our general future directions as a team. We plan to continue work with these pilot partners. So there are places that are looking to potentially expand there. Some institutions are, still exploring the API, so building out the things that they started. There are people that are waiting for our updated API, but are already planning for the integrations they want to do. As I mentioned, ASU with their AI review agent is working on an expanded pilot across the university soon. And so there's a lot of these pilots that are continuing work that we'll be excited to partner with them on. We're advancing machine actionable benefits, such as using AI-assisted tools, both with ASU and other partners, looking at where we can use some of this newer technology to help in DMP writing and reviewing. We're also, as a team, navigating changes in federal landscape, which I know many people are dealing with right now. Don't have a lot of answers here, but it's certainly something that we're aware of and trying to figure out what that means for research data management and keep up to date with the latest policies and needs of researchers in regards to changing funding requirements. And lastly, I just want to pitch, if you want to do your own project, you're looking to build machine actionable integrations, you've got ideas, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to work with people. You can reach out to us at dmptool@uclp.edu. We're a small team, so that email will get to any of us here. And we can help figure out if there's a good collaboration there. You can also reach out to ARL, and we can put you in touch with the right people. But we're really excited to continue this work and see the kinds of machine actionable integrations that people want to build and for people to take advantage of. And so with that, I think we are wrapping up our last webinar, so we can move on to the last slide. Just one more reminder about what the link is to find the videos of these webinars, and the link to our pilot project website there, where we'll be putting out reports, slides, resources, workflows, anything that we come up with will eventually be posted on that site. And with that, we will open it up for questions. I'm going to answer one that there was a couple questions earlier about kind of the staging site, which might be new to a lot of people. So I posted a link in chat to everybody about our DMP Tool staging site. So just to explain what that is, that's kind of a testing version of the DMP Tool. So that website itself is publicly accessible. If you click that link, you should find that you can go to it. You can see public plans. You can log in. You can create an account and log in. But you know, don't put any real DMP. I mean, you can put real DMPs there, but this is all just test data. You know, we regularly use this site to test changes, so things on that the data might be cleared. You know, don't expect anything to stay there. The site could be unstable if we're testing future releases. People will often use it for things like testing an SSO change before it goes in the live site. You know, if it's something that might break login for all of an institution's users, we'll kind of test that out with the administrators on our staging site. And then if it looks good, put it on our production site. So that website itself is accessible to the public if you do want to test things out. Again, just don't assume anything on there is stable. What you need an account for is accessing the API beyond the public plan. So if you're trying to do anything that requires your access to DMPs, or most of the things that Brian talked about other than fetching public plans, that's where you need to reach out to us to get an account set up. So hopefully that clarifies the difference between the website that's publicly available and the API, which needs the account set up. There's a question about how to machine actual DMP automate resource provisioning, such as storage. Can you summarize the steps involved? So this was a really interesting one that UC Riverside was working on. And their original goal was to fully automate it. The idea is that they would have an AI that would review the contents of the DMP and suggest the resources that were needed. Ultimately, throughout the development, they found that there was not enough information in the DMPs to be able to fully automate it. So the DMP comes in and it might say general information about the type of data, but not enough for it to be automated without a human. So that's why they pivoted to this prototype communication tool that pulls in information from the DMP. They do still have an AI that reviews it to give some suggested things. So for example, we saw some examples of their prototype where they would pull in a DMP that had a particular type of MRI data, I believe it was, and that didn't mention anything about file size, but the AI would suggest, I think it's likely to be in this range based on things. But that goes to humans to review. So, that will go to different departments. And, we spoke to somebody from IT that said it was really helpful to have that just initial, even if they don't trust that it's fully accurate, to have an initial rough estimate and range was helpful to get it to the right places and figure out what type of storage was needed. So it goes through from department to department, each adding their own comments. And by the end of it going through everybody, they have, some initial AI comments, but then all of the human expert review that leads to, all right, I think we need 5 terabytes on this type of storage, and here's how we're going to use this UI to assign it to the person. If anybody wants to say more, feel free. When the new product launches, will already published DMPs become machine actionable retroactively, or will only newly created DMPs become machine actionable? So this, it's kind of a gray area because in some ways the DMPs on our site are already machine actionable to a degree. So we do already have the API, which has a fully machine actionable metadata, and all of that will be transferred over to the new site. We haven't yet gotten to the point about looking at the narrative. I think the goal, and Brian, feel free to step in here. I think the goal would be to put all of those into the fully machine actionable format, but because we haven't gotten there yet, it's possible we'll find issues in doing so.
Yeah, that's correct. We're gonna put in our best effort to to migrate things over, and like we had talked about, include the narrative, the question and the answer as part of the JSON. And I don't foresee any issues with that, but as Becky said, there may be, like, we may come across something that prevents it for certain DMPs.
All right, there's a question about fairsharing.org and the standards there. I will have to look more into what that is, unless anybody else wants to comment on that one.
We've had requests in the past for that. We have certain controlled vocabularies that we use for contributor roles, metadata standards, and things like that. I think we'd have to do some analysis to see how we could combine like the fair sharing IDs as well as the ones that we're currently using, and because I'm sure there'll be overlap. Like contributor roles, for example, has a investigation role. In fair sharing, I'm not sure, but I'm sure they have something equivalent. So we'd have to figure out how to disambiguate those or support both. Yeah.
Also, there was a past question about does uploading DMP only support PDF? And just to make sure everybody saw that response, currently it is only PDF, but in the future we plan to allow .docx as well, and maybe more, potentially JSON upload. There's something we're talking about how we can expand that, but right now it's PDF only. There's a question about how important the narrative is. Completely agree. That was a big piece of feedback. I think the two biggest pieces of feedback were needing the narrative, which we recognize. There's just limitations in the current tool. That's one of the major reasons we're doing the rebuild is to offer that, because we know how important that is, and there are limitations in offering that with the current website. So absolutely, totally agree. That is a top priority. Get that narrative. The top priority of machine actionability is getting that narrative into JSON format. And the other big one we heard was the importance of working with draft DMPs, because so many parts of these connections that people want to build are about preparing the DMP. And so they needed to have that, to be able to work with those, not just in the published format. Because they're in terms of the things like the register and senders, you can also always write into the DMP tool at ucop.edu email. We take requests there. As mentioned, we are a small team, and so we can't put in all of the things that people request, but we take a look at the kinds of things people are requested, and right now, again, focused on the rebuild, but then we will be trying to get in the top priority requests people have. Other questions? I'm not seeing anything else, and if people don't want to, if people don't have any more, I think we could wrap this up. And anybody else wants to share anything else at the end? All right. Thank you all so much for coming to all these webinars. We really enjoyed sharing this information. Thank you to all of our presenters. Check out our video when it comes out, share it to relevant people, and we hope to hear from many of you to work with our API.
Thanks all.
Thanks all. Bye.